Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unnext News Radio podcast, your news source for all things unexplained. And now, here's your host for the Unnext News podcast, Margie Kay.
Hello and welcome everyone to Unnext News on the Unnext Network. We are here every Friday evening at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, talking about all things paranormal. And one of the subjects that I am particularly interested in is Bigfoot and Sasquatch and UFOs and the connection between all of that. So I have some really special guests here this evening, and you're going to want to listen to all of this and or watch it on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unnext Network, so that you will get notices about upcoming shows. Mark Reeder lives in Boulder, Colorado, where he works as a writer and associate producer for the video production company Center Communications. His educational programs, Hispanic Achievement in America and Women's Achievement in America, have appeared on PBS national television. He also writes YA and adult sci-fi and fantasy. He's kicked around the universe long enough to have more than a few bumps and bruises. Roughed up and battered like his hat, he's still looking for the exit. And my second guest, Ronald Meyer, owns a film production company, Center Communications. He's produced and directed feature films, including the first feature film for Discovery Communications, Legend of the Spirit Dog. He's author of 2 novels with Mark Reeder and 2 other novels, their latest being Aliens 2035, The End of Technology. Ron leads flow workshops and is a 5th black belt in Aikido. Recently, he produced the #1 streaming documentary series on Amazon Prime about serial killers. As a follow-up to the highly successful Amazon Prime series Chasing Bigfoot, he's produced an award-winning documentary feature called The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. The movie has garnered over 7 million views in many streaming platforms. Welcome to the program, gentlemen. I'm so glad you could.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Thank you for joining me this evening. And Ron, I met you at the Bigfoot conference in Nebraska last year, and we had a little conversation, and I said, you know what? This guy's on the same page that I am. So I've been wanting to have you on, and gosh, you've got so much going on, both of you. You've got films and books, and this new book, The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revisited, and then the film. So we're going to talk about all of that. But first, I've got to ask, Mark, how did you get interested in this subject?
Well, Ron is the one that actually brought me into it. I was, as Ron likes to say kindly, Mark is a skeptic.
Okay.
So I said, well, Ron, what can you show me that would take me out of that role of being the skeptic and someone who would sign on to some of these ideas? And he said, well, I've got an idea for a book. And that book is the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revisited. And by the time we got done with the book, I was no longer a skeptic.
Well, Mark is also a closet contactee. He can tell you about some experiences he's had all his life, but like many people, we don't want to talk about them.
Okay, well, we'll see if Mark wants to talk about that, because he didn't put that in his bio. So, Ron, I'm going to ask the same question. How did you get interested in this subject?
Well, I've always been interested, it turns out, in the paranormal. When I was a kid back in Appleton, Wisconsin, I was obsessed with astronomy and UFOs and everything in the 50s. And I probably had a contact experience with some light phenomena that came at me when I was standing by my telescope. And I've had multiple non-dual experiences throughout my life, and other strange things happen. But the trigger that got me into the Bigfoot business is I was just simply hired to do a series called Chasing Bigfoot. and it was a 5-part series. And I looked at the phenomena, but I was like Mark. I was totally skeptical that there was a hairy beast running around in the woods. It just didn't make sense to me. I got a background in ecology, and it just doesn't make sense. But then I ran across one of the last people I interviewed. His name was Jim Myers, who has the Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado. He said, I think there's something, they're paraphysical. There's something about them that's inexplicable. Too many weird reports came along. And that led me to say, well, so you're saying they're aliens, Jim? Well, he said, maybe. So I said, well, I'm going to go back to one of my passions, which was UFOs and aliens, and see what's happening with that. And that led to the movie, The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed, where I tried to see if there was some connection between them, which I do believe that they come from the same source in some way and have the same impact on people as well.
So you both came at this as skeptics and then came out of it as believers. Would that be fair to say?
I don't know what I'm believing in, but I certainly think the contact reports are correct. And the stuff we filmed is stuff we filmed. Believers. I don't know. I mean, I know something weird's going on, but I can't say what it is I believe in. But I believe the data and the experiences are real.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark, what types of experiences have you had with UFOs or Bigfoot?
Well, I've never had a UFO experience or a Bigfoot experience. What Ron was referring to was an altered state of mind while I was with some friends. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Lakota Indian Thunderbird idea.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm part Native American, and I was with my friends, and we were out in the Snoqualmie area of Seattle. And I looked up and I saw this incredibly huge Thunderbird flying overhead.
Oh, wow.
And I literally, like I'm doing now, I was just staring up at it. And I said to the friend next to me, I said, do you see that Thunderbird? And he goes, Mark, there's no Thunderbird up there. It's a jet. And I looked up and I said, no, it's a Thunderbird. He saw a jet, I saw a Thunderbird, and then it went over the horizon. So that was the first most dramatic experience I've ever had, and the one that I talk about the most.
Wow. Yeah, you and I are going to have to talk off camera because, well, I'm writing a sequel to a book, and it's about giant winged creatures. So, yeah, that's interesting, and it's interesting that someone else has seen something different. Have both of you found in interviewing your witnesses that the same sort of thing happens? One person sees one thing and one sees another.
Yeah, Ray Hernandez. I'm working on a follow-up to the movie. You know who Ray Hernandez is?
I know him very well. He's a good friend.
So you know his origin story in this, and I think he's probably told it to everybody that he and his wife were sitting in their living room, and something showed up, and Ray saw something like a flying saucer or whatever, and his wife saw an angel. And the reality of the situation was that they had a dog that was dying, and I believe the dog got healed, and that changed Ray around, and now he's has the greatest collection of paranormal experiences that probably ever been made, and he's come up with his theory of they all refer back to some common origin, which he doesn't explain, but that's sort of our position as well.
Yeah, as an experiencer myself in all things paranormal, I came to the conclusion several years ago that all of this stuff is related, and for me, it's about consciousness and the level of consciousness and vibration. Have you found in your investigations that people who meditate or are able to get into an altered state of consciousness have more experiences or have very clear experiences?
In the people I've been interviewing lately, it's quite clear that when they get into this altered state, which can, be a UFO contact or a Bigfoot contact experience, and I'm a long-term meditator, so you get into the non-dual state where the self disappears, and you can get into a broader space than that. And my metaphor is more like sinking and letting go, rather than rising up to something higher as a vibration. And within that deeper space, for example, I was with a Bigfooter, and I did a meditation in Wisconsin, and he had mind speak for the first time. This is Jay Bashokin. He's done 2 good movies and was part of one of our programs. And he was like the most armed person I ever seen with equipment, running all the time. And he heard something in his mind say, "Turn everything off." And as soon as he did that, he was at total peace. And subsequently, he's said he's had awakenings and been in a way that he's never been before.
So I have a different take on this. I don't think it matters whether you meditate or not. In my experience, these altered states or these communions with something out there that is not explained by the usual methods of scientific observation, something that hits you deeply in your heart, that comes to you when you need it. And if you're the least bit open to listening instead of trying to be the smartest person in the room and tell everybody what you know, if you're the least bit open to listening, it will give you the answers you need. In my personal experience, it told me I had to change my life. And I did.
And did that turn out for the better?
A couple of years later, I found the love of my life, and we were happily married for many years until she sadly passed away. But yeah, it worked out for the better.
It's amazing what happens when you have an open mind and when you're ready to have experiences. I've spoken with so many people, and they all say the same thing, that the experience happens when they're ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I often think that that's in retrospect, though, that sometimes it shocks them out of whatever they were in and loses a knot and opens things up. And it was like, oh, wow, I didn't. And then the change takes place. I mean, I've heard more cases like that than, well, of course, in retrospect, you can say, well, it had to happen or something like that. But I don't think a lot of them weren't running around looking for an answer in that form.
I would agree with Ron on that. I definitely was not around looking for some kind of an answer. It just happened.
Okay, let's go. Let's do this. I'm going to show this trailer for Alien Contact in the Rockies, and we'll talk about that for a little bit.
The Rocky Mountains of Colorado are well known for their mysterious and unexplained occurrences. More and more of these experiences cluster around paranormal hotspots, or as they are now called, places where the Skinwalker Ranch phenomena are occurring.
I would say there's an energy field that's fairly large right here.
A team of paranormal investigators set out to explore one of these hotspots and create another.
He points to where the portal is.
What occurred was dramatic and unexpected. Interactions with playful supernatural beings.
What's in the bottle? Nothing.
Hey, Ron.
No?
Bottle's empty.
Holy shit. It's not sitting up there anyway.
Well, right here is the feather.
How would it have got out of that bottle? Wouldn't. You sure that's it?
Yeah.
Bigfoot.
Now they're close together. I'm thinking this looks like a.
I don't think an elk would
It
walk.
looks like a two-legged animal the way it's heavy up.
Channeling.
Was there any other ones you really want? Go back to the one where you finished my sentence and then hear that one again.
Here's my guide. Here's my guide.
That's crazy. It's my guy here. He was so eager for me to say that it finished it for me.
Orbs. Mutilations.
This looks to be more cut.
And finally, capturing on film strange creatures that emerge from a portal. All this and more in Alien Contact in the Rockies.
Well, if anybody takes a look at that, they'll know what it's about. But what was your experience filming this? Did you have personal experiences while you were doing this work?
I had a couple. I mean, I own 40 acres of land just outside of Rocky Mountain National Park, and that's the location where the portal opened up. So I would say the one thing that, well, when a mutilation was dropped at our gifting site, and I must say that was quite startling. And I went off and did a meditation, and this happened, it was an open eye meditation, and then I closed my eyes. I don't know if you know what the hypnagogic state is.
Oh, yes.
It's a state between being awake and dream,
Mm-hmm.
and you're kind of observer, and weird things can show up there from, weird graphics to, I often get a parade of people. But this time I got a parade of the largest and most weirdest collection of creatures I've ever seen in my life, just coming one after another in my mind's eye. So I would say that was the strangest thing. And of course, when we saw the effect, the first time that the static that revealed the creature that came out of the trail cam set over the mutilated deer, that was, exhilarating, like, wow, something, it's just exciting as heck. You got to hear me say shit on the in the movie too, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a normal response, so it makes it more believable.
Yeah, I mean, I was when we're looking for something to play with us in a gifting site.
Yeah.
And I think that was the third or fourth time we came back. Nothing had happened on the first few times, and the thing was so hidden underneath this rock, and there aren't any people there. It's a gated community of 40 acres, so
Mm-hmm.
it would take something with a very dexterous hand to reach in there, get the feather out, and stick it in another crevice. So that blew me away. I was just like, whoa!
So you put a feather
Huh?
you put a feather inside a bottle and then hid it in that crevice.
That's right.
So it would have to have been deliberately taken out and the feather taken out and the bottle put back
And
by a sentient being.
Yes, it would be, or some other really mysterious force, eh?
Yeah, maybe something we don't understand.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, so that was shocking. It's like, wow. I mean, it's the first time I had that kind of interaction of, gifting and something wanting to play. Because we had a ritual, we were told by somebody to invite contact. And then it happened in this kind of unusual way.
I noticed you had someone using dowsing rods to find a portal or an opening. Do you think that was successful?
We wanted it to be one place because we found some bones on our land. And they kept saying, no, it's not there. It's on the other side of the Little Thompson, which runs through the property. And we didn't like that. We were hoping it was, where we thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And eventually Alan, my son-in-law, who you see in there, who pulled out the feather, went over and found this strange rock formation, which you would see in the movie, and there was an opening, a round opening in there, but there were no readings, although he got sizzled on the way over there.
That's yeah. Explain what sizzling is.
It's in some way, inexplicably, your cognitive functions are messed with. Probably the most extreme case is when you have a long or short period of memory loss, and at other times it's extreme pain or confusion. If you watch the Skinwalker Ranch series, a number of people on there had been sizzled. I think one actually had to go to the hospital. And I talked to Thomas Winterton, and he had multiple experiences which he thought were through the hitchhiker effect when he went home. So it's a messing up of your cognitive abilities, any cognitive ability. For Alan, it was extreme pain and dizziness and kind of losing his balance.
What do you think about infrasound, that the Bigfoot might be using that to maybe chase people away or something?
I don't know how to answer that because I don't know how I would test that. At least I haven't had the occasion to test it. But it seems like people have had that feeling in connection with some Bigfoot activity, what they thought, but not always. It seems to occur, it certainly occurs with abductions and other things to do with aliens where there's no report of Bigfoot. That's the best I can give you on that. I don't know. It'd be interesting to test it. I'm sure there are sensors that could pick it up if you were running around with one. Probably have one on your phone in a couple years.
Yeah, they've got everything else on there, and a lot of it works. For paranormal and UFO investigators, you just have to have this one thing, so it's kind of nice. Mark, did you ever have an experience where you were sizzled, or perhaps that infrasound was used?
Not directly, but it's very interesting to me that when Ron and I were working on this particular chapter in the book, my next door neighbor and I were talking the next day, and he reported being up in the Rocky Mountains near Rocky Mountain National Park and getting sizzled.
Oh.
And of course, he used a medical term, I believe it's called geographic amnesia, where parts of the brain suddenly just stop working. And so they say, well, this is some sort of kind of amnesia. And I questioned him about it because we had just written this chapter. And the more he talked about how none of his friends were affected by it, just he was affected by it. And he was a little bit away from the group, and he couldn't remember anything until he actually got home from their hike, led me to believe that he had been sizzled.
I have some friends who are Bigfoot investigators, and they have found a place in North Missouri where there's a Bigfoot clan. And they brought some new people in one time, 2 men. And the 2 men, they were a bunch of people all together. They weren't hiking. And the two new men were sizzled only. And they were in the middle of the entire group, and nobody else was affected. And they took that as a warning that they didn't want those particular people there. So they left. And they didn't let them come back. So it's interesting stuff.
Just one thing about the warning thing. I interviewed 2 people that were sizzled. More than 2, but 2 in particular reported that after being sizzled, they were cured of an ailment.
Oh, well, that's even more interesting. Yes, something to do with the vibration, perhaps.
It had to do with that dislocation and memory loss, and then one had terrible tinnitus. Yeah, and when it was over with, it was cured.
Okay. Well, we are up on a break. We'll be back right after these messages. Are you thinking about purchasing a wood-fired heating or cooking appliance but don't know where to start? The new book, Wood-Fired Heating and Cooking, will guide you through the process and make the decision much easier. Find out about wood stoves, wood-burning fireplace inserts, masonry heaters, cook stoves, brick ovens, and more. Learn about operation and maintenance, buying and storing wood, even how to make your own charcoal. A bonus section includes delicious recipes for cooking in a wood-burning oven, grill, tandoori oven, or smoker. The wise homeowner, prepper, or homesteader will have the ability to heat their home with wood when the power goes out or to save money on increasing gas bills. Wood-Fired Heating and Cooking is available at Amazon. Visit www.woodfiredpub.com for more information. That's woodfiredpub.com. My book, The Kansas City UFO Flaps, covers cases that have occurred in Kansas City over the years. Kansas City has long been a UFO hotspot since before the year 1900. I cover many of these cases, starting with the airships in 1897. I cover a lot of cases and speak with actual witnesses. You'll see photos of UFOs and find out why this may be happening in Kansas City. And what is creating portals that could create interdimensional openings. Read about the events that we've held in Kansas City to discuss this and more. Visit unxmedia.com for more information. The book is available at Amazon.
Since humans first looked to the sky, we have wondered if there was other life out there.
So we proceeded to pick up the parts, that it was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else, which we didn't know what it was.
This is not new. What is new for mainstream science is a high probability that aliens are with us in the form of Bigfoot.
There's ample evidence that there are creatures that I will call Bigfoot here.
I think that we must turn to paraphysical or interdimensional considerations if we're going to fully understand their presence on Earth and their interactions with humans.
And we're back with the next news. I'm your host, Margie Kay, and I am speaking with Ron Meyer and Mark Reeder, both filmmakers and authors. And we just showed the clip just a little bit ago, the Bigfoot Alien Connection. Gentlemen, how did you come to the determination that there's a connection between Bigfoot and aliens?
Well, I think, there are a number of people that really believe that. During the interviews, once I started on the book, I focused on people who were primarily that had that position. So it wasn't hard because they were supporting the contention. So they made pretty decent arguments, and it had to do with a lot of the qualities that Bigfoot exhibit, which cannot be explained by ordinary science, like disappearing before your eyes, felt sense, but you can't see anything. What they call eye shine, self-illuminating eyes with no light shining on it, and some other phenomena that they seem to walk on air. And the biggest one is that you only see them for a short time. They're glimpses for people, almost like they've been manufactured by whatever to show up for them for their life at that particular point in time, like we were talking about before, these trigger events that untie a knot or open something up for you that maybe allows meaningful coincidences too. So there was a ton of reports once I started looking, and since I started when I did the series, I would say at least 50% or more are now believe that there's something paraphysical, alien, whatever term you want to use to account for their appearances and their activities and interaction with people. But and of course, the Sierra Sounds, you're familiar with those, right?
And heard them several times.
That's probably the most inexplicable something that was attributed to Bigfoot. I'm just doing in my new movie, I do a little part on what Moorhead and Scott Nelson, the linguist who studied it, point of view is now, and they're convinced it's a language and it's not from a hairy ape at all. And that's the message. It's trying to tell you something.
Scott Nelson spoke at one of my conferences a few years ago, and he played the sounds. And of course, he had analyzed it. He's a linguist. He knows. But I could tell just by listening that was a language. So it's obviously something we don't understand, but hopefully someday we will understand. And then the idea that Bigfoot is interdimensional. I've done a number of investigations in the Midwest, and one in particular stands out. A very large Bigfoot was seen by a woman, and then her husband and her neighbor, who was a policeman, followed these tracks in the snow for about 1.5 miles next to a tree line that was on their property. They followed these tracks, and all of a sudden the tracks just stopped. And there was no place for it to have gone. There was no place for it to have jumped to a rock or something like that. It simply disappeared. And you hear that a lot. So explaining that is difficult.
So one of the things that I find fascinating about this is that in the 21st century, where we have technology at our fingertips in the form of this phone, that the pictures of Bigfoot or as a hairy beast running through the woods are not numerous. In fact, there's none of them really in the 21st century. So that leads that Ron and I would have this discussion. We meet at coffee houses and we discuss books that we're doing or films that Ron's working on, where I might be helping him with the script or vetting the scripts and things. And we would talk about these things time and again, and we always came up to the same conclusion, that if Bigfoot were an actual creature like an ape or a gorilla or some type of creature like that, somebody by now would have snapped a lot of pictures of it. And those pictures would be on the front page of the National Enquirer for making a lot of money at it. So we started to think, what was the rational explanation for the fact that in the 21st century, where there are over 3 billion cell phones in the world, there aren't any pictures, any direct pictures of an ape-like creature? And we started to think in terms of interdimensional beings. We started to think in terms of aliens, Bigfoot being a visitor from a extremely advanced culture, alien culture. And then we got to thinking, how do alien cultures communicate when their psychology and their symbology is completely different? And so that led to Aliens 2035, the end of technology. And it also led to other ideas of how to express what Bigfoot really means in a sort of paranormal way instead of this physical way.
Mm-hmm. I did a case investigation several years ago in Missouri, in this big paranormal hotspot that's at 38 degrees latitude. And there's a lot of things that go on there. And it was a paranormal team who contacted me because they were investigating a Bigfoot sighting by their son and went to the spot a couple of nights later and to the exact spot, and they saw an incredible UFO. And prior to the UFO, there were these white balls of light that came into the trees, and they were filming those first. And that some of the balls of light would come up to their camera and then go away. And it looked like they were investigating them. And then this gigantic UFO appears above them over the exact same spot where this Bigfoot was sighted. So I felt like there was a connection of some type that, and that's what really first got me interested in the Bigfoot and alien connection and thinking that Bigfoot could possibly be an alien. Now, I have seen pictures myself of Bigfoot, but the people involved do not want me to publish the pictures. And I've had that happen. I probably got 6 cases where the people do not want me to publish those pictures, and they just want to show me so I would see that they were telling the truth, and they want to be completely anonymous. So I think part of that, Mark, where the reason you're not seeing these things is because people have a fear of being ridiculed or being, maybe people thinking that they faked the photos, because now, anybody can fake anything, and they probably just wouldn't believe it.
I agree with you. There are other circumstances that would lead to photos not being published, or photos that were taken and not being published. But I was just trying to let you know that this is kind of the thinking that Ron and I were working along that allowed us to get to this next place. And from that next place, when we were thinking about the paranormal idea, we started to wonder, what is the purpose of a paranormal experience that somebody has? What does it do for them? Among the Lakota Indians, and among the Plains Indians, so let me be more general, when they do the Sundance, that's a really poor way of describing it as a religious experience. It's much more than that. It's an experience for the individual which changes their lives forever and puts them on a different path. This in itself, that Sundance, is a type of paranormal experience that these Native Americans are going through. So we started to think there's much more to this idea of Bigfoot as a hairy creature, or even as an extraterrestrial. We began to think that there's something within this experience that changes individuals who have it and give them a different outlook on life.
Yes.
So that's where we were going with it.
I definitely have to agree with that.
So, where would you like to go?
Well, you've got so much going on. I want to make sure that everybody knows about your films and your books and how to get them. So let's go there first. How can people get your films and your books?
Well, Amazon, dominates the field of books, so you can pretty much get every one on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And the two that are current are, of course, can I hold it up?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed. And I could grab a copy in a moment of it. Aliens 2035, I would say. Those are the two things Mark and I wrote together recently, which we're quite proud of. And right now, the Paranormal Highway, if you have Amazon Prime, you can find it there. There's a movie on there called The Paranormal Highway as well. It's kind of a cheesy horror film. That's not it. It's the 5-part series. The Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed is on YouTube, Pluto, Tubi, Amazon, pretty much, and Roku. So if you have any of those, you can have your pick whether you want commercials or not. the alien contact in the Rockies. I think it's only on Voodoo right now. And those would be the current ones that we got going.
Okay, now you mentioned that you're working on some current projects. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, I wanted to do a follow-up to the Bigfoot Alien Connection Revealed, because since the release of the UFOs, first by the New York Times, and then they got the videos, that has changed the landscape completely. People are coming forward. People in academia and science are saying there's something we can study, we can talk openly about. And so all sorts of new information is pouring in. And so I thought, let's see if we can take this deeper than we did in the first one, to look for this connection between which now everybody, like Ray Hernandez, is that there's some sort of source that we don't have contact with. And at the same time, there's another movement that's been around for a long time, which is, it started out as a human potential movement in the 50s, and then kind of deteriorated into the New Age thing, which turned into a bunch of personal projects. But again, the idea that we're much more than we think we are, and we can develop these special skills. And if you're familiar a little bit with what was called this group of people that were head of secret society and got these downloads and turned them into technology, there's a real connection between, because what our technology does is it has created in the universe a whole new world of possibilities, what's possible that wasn't there before. And that's pretty mysterious in itself. And a lot of those have pretty much derived, as you start listening to these old scientists, from some weird experience they had where they saw the future. For example, I know that Steve Jobs saw the iPhone in one of those precognitive situations as a result of some of the people that I've studied with. So there's a lot going on that I think we can all jump on right now. That's exciting.
Yeah, exciting and interesting. Tesla said the same thing. Tesla said that during a meditative walk through Central Park, he was downloaded with information to create things. So, it's coming from an external source. And I guess if you tune it in right, you get that frequency and you pull that in.
History is rife with those. Rene Descartes, Isaac Newton, all received downloads. They talk about it. In Rene Descartes and Isaac Newton's time, it was a gift from the angels or from God. In the more recent times, we use a different parlance. We use the term download because it makes more sense for us.
It does, yes, because
And I think, for me, the biggest change is that I get these long sequences, you might call them coincidences, that lead me to something in particular that I never would have thought would have happened. One weird thing after another. That culminated last Sunday. We went up to this place we call the Spirit Tree with you know what an SLS device is?
Yes.
So it grabs onto three-dimensional creatures that we can't see with our eyes, and portrays them as stick figures. And we went to the site where I had seen my one and only Bigfoot, and had a thing called a spirit tree. And my son-in-law, Alan, felt it at the same time. So he took a channeler and another person who was sensitive up there to see what would happen. And sure enough, on the SLS device, there's a dancing creature inside the tree.
Wow.
That was really cool.
That is.
And this woman who channels a blue avian being called Zeta, and all of a sudden she turned in. How you've seen people who channel, right? They become a slightly different person with a different speech way.
Yeah.
And the blue avian showed up and told us we were doing good, and we were there for the betterment of humanity. And then she did a chant, and the SLS showed her as the only thing with the shape, and then a being going up to the sky as she was doing her chanting in connection with the alien. So we captured all that on film. So, and the sequence that led to that whole thing is just, extraordinary, over a half a year.
Wow.
So
wow.
That's what kind of, and I think when people talk about, the technological advances, it's the same long sequence of events that begin with someplace because you're open, and then through that it ends up, changing the universe. Not that I was changing it, but these other people are.
Exactly. You said you did a full paranormal investigation at the next Skinwalker Ranch called the Bradshaw Ranch outside of Sedona. What happened there?
Do you know what it is?
I know what it is. I've remote viewed it for people who were out there.
So you know who Brandon Fugel is, right?
Yes.
He owns Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah, he owns a Skinwalker. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he 2 weeks before we were there, he was there trying to buy it with Thomas Winterton. No luck though. It's owned by the government. They're doing some weird kind of. They say that Department of Energy is doing some research on high altitude native plants and climate change or something, if you can believe that.
No, but they've got a reason to be there.
Yeah, well, they have to say something why they own it. So Alan that's the first time we used the SLS device, and we picked up creatures, one sitting on a cabinet, one sitting in a chair in one of the buildings. In another of the buildings, Alan had a full-fledged sighting of a creature that had been seen before and hadn't been photographed by our host, which is, it's not quite a Bigfoot, it's not quite anything, but it's fairly large. Mm-hmm. And then when he reported back on camera, because the cameraman didn't know what he was looking at, but you could just see him in this kind of trancy state, then Alan reported what he said. And when he was reporting it, we were filming him, and outside of the building, there was a light phenomena that wasn't a reflection, and there's no electricity out there, so there was nobody out there with a flashlight that synced up with him, like when he said it, and then it flashed, the light flashed. So that's a couple examples of the things we picked up there, among other things. We got to go back and do one more.
Do you?
There's a lot of prints out there too, as you probably heard somebody say.
Oh, you mean footprints?
Yeah, various kinds.
Okay.
Of people say dinosaurs and big ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a whole collection of weird prints.
Oh.
Photographed and carried on over the years. And,
now,
and there are larger UAPs, although I didn't see one, but other people reported.
So at the conference where you spoke in Vernal, next to the Skinwalker Ranch, you did your own investigation at the edge of the property and encountered a UAP. What happened there?
Well, this thing, which was slightly amorphous, elongated, and it cruised from the west to the east across in parallel to the mesa, that they're always drilling in and doing that sort of stuff. And it's hard to figure out what it is. We got it on a thermal, and it's maintained the same shape, but it's inexplicable. And it went fairly slow because I was able to track it. My experience of it personally was that it was extremely close. When I looked at the footage, it wasn't close at all. It was closer to the mesas. I still can't reconcile that in my head right now, how that was possible. But everybody saw it, and we got it on 2 different cameras.
Were you there as well, Mark?
I was not.
Okay. Have you had any experiences you weren't expecting when you have been out filming?
Ron actually does the filming. I'm basically the guy who says to him, let's put this in a way that everybody can understand it. And then I ask him questions. I say, how did this happen? What's your explanation for it? So I hold Ron's feet to the fire to make certain that it's just not getting caught up in the moment and thinking, oh my God, we just solved cold fusion, sort of idea.
Mark's also had that felt sense or felt feeling of something that's tracking their movements and moving with them, but you can't see it.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the most common.
This may have been the reason why I left Seattle.
Huh?
This may have been the reason why I left Seattle.
They'll find you anywhere.
That's the problem, is I think they're finding me here now, 20 years later. So
yeah, they will find you. Oh my gosh. It sounds like you've had some crazy times, crazy experiences, and interesting as all heck. And your films, and oh my gosh, this book, I recently read it. I highly recommend this book to everybody. It's very well put together, very well written. Got to go buy it right now, everybody. And then you've got other projects coming up. How long does it take you from beginning to end to either write a book or get a film done?
So the book that you just held up was like a miracle write. Maybe Mark can describe it. I mean, usually we labor, but I think we put this together in an extraordinary amount of time. It just poured out. You want to talk to that?
Yeah, that was when Ron and I write anything, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, it takes us quite a while, about a year, to turn out a book. And in that year, we do a lot of writing and rewriting, and we get the seams set up the way we want them to. I would say that this particular book is another example of downloading, because both of us had the experience of meeting at a coffee house, and the ideas just got downloaded onto a page of notes. I would write up the notes. I'd hand them to Ron. Ron would make 1 or 2 corrections, maybe 3 or 4 if it was like a longer chapter. And we would then read it and we'd say, okay, and let's go to the next chapter. And I've never written like that, and Ron's never written like that. In this type, Ron has experience writing that way with his educational videos, but I've never had that experience before.
Yeah, it took us like 2 months to do the whole darn thing.
It took us a month to write the first draft, and then we tweaked it just a little bit, and then that was like another month, but we could have handed in the first draft without a problem.
Wow.
To the publishers.
I wish I could write things that quickly.
Me too. That was a one-off as far as I know.
It just came out. Has to come out.
Well, that's a case for downloading. Absolutely.
It is.
That information is just there. And it's time to come out, and people are ready for it. And they're ready for it now more than ever, I believe. People are so much more open-minded. They're willing to talk about these things. UFOs at least are in mainstream media. That's cool. Now we just see it's Sasquatch there.
But let me just remember, it's changing you, it's changing humanity too. It's not just seeing more stuff that's kind of weird. It's enhancing what humans can do. I mean, we put satellites into space. We created elements that only technology could create. So that's all coming out of this, and that's growing fast. And it's playing into the ideas like, what is life? Because if there's aliens, there's some sort of life, and we don't really have a definition of life either, but it probably has to do with a kind of physics, and this is what I've learned, based on information, that's the secret to it all. It's just not part of our ordinary physics. And of course, the government's working on it, and the Mormons are working on it, because it'll be very powerful to figure it out.
And I think Ron hit upon something that, or briefly, that I want to expound on just a little bit, and that is the word weird. Back in the 20th century, if you had this experience, you were weird, you were shunned, and it's no wonder people don't want to show you pictures they'll show you the pictures, but they don't want to publish them.
Yeah.
But in the 21st century, The paranormal is now becoming this way of lifting up all of humanity, person by person. And so the word weird doesn't apply anymore. Instead, people are saying, you had that experience? I wish I had that experience. And so while there still are pockets of resistance everywhere in the world, not just the United States, more and more people are saying, this is important. This is a way that humanity moves forward. Pinker talks about the better angels of our nature. This is part of that.
Well, that's a very good note to end on. Thank you, gentlemen, both for spending some time with me this evening. I wish we had more time. I hope you'll come back again soon.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you both. Well, that is the end of our show for this evening, and stay tuned because Race Hobbs' new show, Phenomenon, is back. Okay? You're not going to believe this, but he's going to tell you all about it. He's going to tell you all about the archives that are now available and the new program. Good luck with your new show, Race. This is Margie Kay signing off for now.